What should you do if you want to learn how to code electronics, robotics, and hardware? Hello and welcome to KimchiRobotics, the best amateur electronics robotics journey on the internet. I'm your host, Kimchi. Make sure to like, subscribe my stuff. Don't you leave without doing it. A question that I get asked from the beginning when I started posting these kinds of videos on this channel is, what should I study? What specific niche should I get into in this industry of coding electronics, robotics, programming on PCs, anything, coding hardware, any of that stuff? What is the most profitable route to pursue? And this is a very loaded question, but I want to break it down to help you to maybe guide you into making your own decision, because I think that's the best way for you. I think a lot of people focus too much on the actual details of the journey instead of the overall journey itself. So a lot of you are probably going into college, or you're going in to get a master's degree or something like that, and you don't want to waste your time learning something that's going to be outdated. I think that's the overall worry into getting into this industry. I think most of you will understand and accept the fact that it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of failures before you start seeing success. And that's a part of paying your dues. And there's a lot of different ways you can use this knowledge that you'll gain into becoming a profitable and knowledgeable person. You can go on and create little things, electronics, and maybe try to invent something, which is more of what I'm interested in. I just got these ideas one day and I just wanted to make them, and it is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Well, maybe not the hardest. And maybe some of you just want to learn how to do this as a hobby, like program Raspberry Pi or Arduino or microcontroller, stuff like that. My advice is it doesn't matter what you're going to focus on in the long term. What matters is getting your momentum going. That is the hardest thing for me personally, and from what I've seen from many other people. Each project you do, each language that you study, you have to get that momentum going. And a lot of people that are in this industry are introverts, and they're not really into going out and asking people for, help or advice. They like to kind of stay in and figure it out on their own. I may be wrong on that. So my advice to everybody who's worried about becoming outdated or studying something that's not relevant and not being able to land those industry jobs, that can be stressful, and it's the same for every job pretty much. You have to stay relevant. And I would challenge you to maintain a larger picture view of the entire situation. So you're getting into this field, this industry that we label technology. It's this bubble. Inside of that sphere of technology, you have different parts of it. And those consist of hardware programming, which can consist of, PC programming, Intel chips, AMD chips, the AVR chips, the PIC chips, all kinds of stuff, ARM chips. So you have all this chip, you have the hardware coding, embedded coding, all that stuff. And that's more of what I'm interested in. I just like flipping on switches and making stuff move or do things. I think that's really, really interesting. And then you have the different languages that you have to use to code for those chips that they're created for. You have the C language, you have assembler or assembly, whatever it's called. And then you have these object-oriented programming languages, like on the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino. You can use C++, Python, all that stuff. And then you have all these other aspects. You have like machine learning, and you have automation. You have all these different fields that you can get into later on. And that's what I would suggest is remembering that you're in the technology field, and then you go from there. So you say, I'm into technology and I want to program, hardware, or I want to code a website, and what language I do that in is JavaScript. And then just focus on that. Just focus on getting into a larger niche, if you will, something that is widely employable. And this is just my advice. You can do whatever you want. I wouldn't focus too much on your actual steps that you're taking. Like you don't look down at your feet while you walk. You would rather look where you want to go, and then you automatically take the steps getting there. And the hardest thing is getting the momentum to start going there. Once you get going, once you got your momentum, you can pace yourself. You set very small goals. As you pace yourself, you need to have patience with yourself. And I think that's one thing that I've learned. You'll find everybody is good at stuff and bad at stuff. Some people are more creative. I think I'm more creative than I am logical. I'm not very good at math or the logic in programming chips and stuff like that. I just love to create something, and then I like to put a little creative twist on it, a little creative spin. So just focus on that. Just focus on what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and that's okay, because that's your personal touch. That's your fingerprint, basically, on this industry. If you really need some direction, I would suggest looking at current news and article trends. So we can go into this article I found from ZDNet. So since the overall bubble realm of technology that we're in is changing so rapidly, it's important to follow up on the news and trends if you want to stay fairly relevant, depending on what you're getting into. I'm always searching for how to stay relevant on, YouTube search and Google search, stuff like that, because I think what I'm trying to do is sometimes a little too niche. So I look for trends and stuff like that and see where I can fit into that. And here's an article from ZDNet that I found today, because a lot of people worry about this one, the top programming languages. Like, what should you get into? Is that going to, be good for the long term? So what I got from the article is there are the main, top 3 programming languages that you should be focusing on right out of the bat. And I think the top 2 are definitely JavaScript and Python. You could do a lot with JavaScript. There's still a lot of, just go where all the people are going. There's tons of people using JavaScript, and there's tons of people using Python. And the cool thing is, they're not just using them for one platform. It'd be really advantageous for you to get into something that you can translate into other stuff. So if you're specifically a PC, maybe a website coder, or you're doing web applications, you can take what you learn from that and you can apply it to a new field, so to speak. So if you're only on JavaScript on the PC, you're doing stuff on there, but you want to slide on over and get your feet wet doing hardware programming, it's going to be fairly easy for you. You're going to be able to figure it out because you did a lot of the hard work figuring out how to develop applications and software in JavaScript. It translates really easily. It's the thing that I really like about the Python language is you can use it to program things like the Raspberry Pi, and then you can still use that Python experience and that language, and you can go on to do things developed for the desktop computer, format, the PC. One thing that I took away from this article is there was a kind of like a survey, like a report done that tried to look at all of the global software developer trends in 160 countries fairly recently. This is quarter 3, 2021, so they just did it. So they were covering the different languages, the tools, APIs, apps, technology segments, and the attitudes of the developers. So you can have a bunch of people who are in a field, but if they're not happy and satisfied, that's something that's very important to pay attention to. The report also looked at developer involvement in 5G and IoT, the Internet of Things. Again, I'm not a fan, but that is the trend. So if you're looking to get into this field for money, people are going to expect you to be dabbling into these technologies. I would say, at least get to know it. Something that I thought was interesting was they found out that at least 2.5 million developers had joined the JavaScript community in the past 6 months alone. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of new developers. And they might have experience in other fields, and they felt it was relevant to either get trained in JavaScript or their company suggested it. It doesn't matter if you're actually doing JavaScript programming. Like I said, just follow the trends of the industry and what companies are recommending. So as you can see, Python is the second most popular next to Java, C, and C++. See, I'm still relevant. And this is actually a really nice little chart that they provided for you. This is very recent information, and you can see any of these top 4 language. I wouldn't do PHP. But any of these top 4, even C#, come on. Any of these top 4 languages and Kotlin down here, that's for mobile and Android programming. Get into something that's going to be relevant. Get into something interesting. And you can see, look at this. They tell you exactly where this is applicable. So all you got to do is come in here and say, oh, I want to do IoT. Okay, what are the top IoT languages? Python. Boom, right there. And it's least popular in mobile, AR, and VR. So that's not really a good language for those platforms. So you can weigh your options here. And I wouldn't suggest getting into multiple languages. That gets really difficult and confusing. Like every video and every forum you go in, people are like, I'm learning this, this, and this. And you'll get the experience like, OGs in there, and they'll be like, no. Like, just focus on getting good at one thing first. You can't be a basketball player and a football player and a tennis player all at the same time. You got to focus on one thing, and then within those sports, you got to be good at kicking the soccer ball in the goal, or passing. Like, you can't spread yourself out all over the place like that. That's insane. And people who want to learn a language within like 6 months or something like that, that's insane. You can't do that. No, don't do that. Yeah, you might get somewhere, but man, that's a pipe dream. If I were getting into programming and I wanted to do web applications, boom, drop JavaScript right there. And people are so weird. They're so worried about like, oh well, there's this new language coming out. That doesn't matter. Look at Kotlin. Kotlin is like the easier to develop for Android language, and I've seen it and it looks pretty cool. But look at it, it's not that popular yet. Just go into what's popular. Follow the wave, man. Ride the wave, baby. Woo! Because nothing's more annoying and frustrating than getting into some part of this industry and you can see that it's not going to give you any returns. You're not going to really be sought after or employable, or it's going to be difficult for you to do that project that you want to get done. And remember, like I said, it doesn't matter which language you're getting into out of the start. It doesn't matter what platform you're in. That stuff's important to an extent. What really is going to make you employable is the way you sell yourself. That's a whole nother topic. There's great videos out there on people demonstrating that it doesn't matter how much you know per se. You're going to have to pass some sort of test or quiz or whatever, and people have made videos about that. But overall, I mean, if you really put in the work, I think a lot of people don't put in the actual work, and that's where they get caught up and they don't know what they're doing. Because from what I've seen, even like when Google asks you, how to do stuff in an interview, those people that have made those videos and posted on forums, they're surprised at how little people know and what they can't, the basic things they can't do. There's stuff that I have missed in fundamentals because I've been, doing all kinds of different things. So yeah, just focus on one thing and get good at it and you'll be fine. And down here, they have this really, really nice chart that has shown how different languages have become more popular over time. You can see down here the trends over the years that they're trying to project and guess the popularity and declining popularity of certain languages. So you can see JavaScript continues to be a very steady, popular language as the -- language that people are getting into. Then you have Python. Python is pretty strong right there. Java looking good. Java's still relevant. Then you have C and C++. Look at this. C and C++, slightly, rising to the top here. We're going to get there someday. We were at one point. But I think people are starting to realize that, C is not an old language. C is better in certain applications than it is in others. Once it's on the chip and it's running, it doesn't have to do anything else to get it to run. It's just on there. So it's very lower form factor. It takes up less space. It just takes a little getting used to. I would say all of these languages are fairly strong. And look at Kotlin rising up from the 11th spot up to spot number 8 over the years. It gets introduced, people start to play with it, and then, it starts to steady out. I would not get into Ruby. I would not get into Rust. I would not get into any of those things quite yet if you're starting in an industry, unless you absolutely knew that you needed that information. You needed to know those things. And here they've provided a really nice chart that maps out the data that they've collected since Q2 of 2018. You don't want to look too far into the past because that really doesn't matter. You want to look into basically, the most recent trends, the last, up to 4 years, I'd say 5 years, because this technology realm is changing so rapidly. So they go back to Q2 2018. That's good enough data. We're in 2021 now, almost 2022. Can you believe it? And then we have JavaScript, strong first, right there. Boom. And that's what I think most people are learning in college. That's what I think most people feel safe with. And I think that's what's calling for jobs and companies are looking for. They're looking for JavaScript developers. They're looking for app developers, all kinds of stuff like that, web apps. And any time that you spend in any of these top 5, except for PHP, any of these top 5 languages, it's going to be worth your time. I guarantee it. And so here you can see Java is usually second or third. It's in the top 3 right here. Java is still, a lot of people have their opinions about Java and they point out its declining popularity, but it's still a very relevant and widely studied language. Python coming in a strong second. You have all of the people that are learning Python both for web applications and computer desktop applications, as well as people using it to develop on the Raspberry Pi and similar platforms. It's a very good language that translates between the two. And so you could make stuff on both platforms by knowing the overall workings of Python. Really, really cool stuff. Granted that programming with Python on the Raspberry Pi isn't the same exact Python, word for word. It's very close. It's called MicroPython, and they have CircuitPython and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. You're gonna see the differences, and then the hardest part about learning any language is getting used to the syntax. And if you have to indent and see, you don't. It's just a matter of getting used to the culture of that language, and then wrapping your head around that, and getting used to the overall structure of that language that you're going to be using to program something. The next thing that I would definitely look at are what the level of satisfaction that people are feeling in this industry. Nobody wants to study for 4 or more years and maybe go into college loan debt and then get into an industry that makes you feel empty and feels like you're not really getting paid what you're worth. And here you can see what is worrying people in this industry. Highest thing is higher compensation. This is what would motivate them to change their employer. They want to look for higher compensation. They put in a lot of work and they don't see it on their paycheck, basically. Some people, they feel like they're stuck and they want to get out of a kind of a niche that they don't want to be in. And that's where this career advancement worry comes into play. So these are the top, I would look at the top 3. The top 3. I mean, higher compensation and more better benefits, that's kind of the same thing in my opinion. I mean, overall, it's your return on your investment. Ability to work remotely. So you can see it like drops off the percentage that people are worried. And these are in the different places in China, Eastern Europe, Russia, and North America is in the yellow here. This is valuable information. So you can get into this any part of this industry pretty much knowing what people are worried about and things that you can expect. That'll help you navigate towards your overall goal. Like, what do you want to really do in the end? I mean, I'm looking at higher compensation right here and career advancement, and to me that screams, don't just be a programmer. Maybe get into executive level stuff and higher spots in that industry. You don't have to be a little programmer at a desk. Pretty much anybody can learn how to do that these days. So I would get into the industry, get the experience and the knowledge, and then focus on those higher positions, those managerial and even executive positions. Those C-suite areas should be your target. And this is fascinating to me. Better company culture is very low. It's not that important. You're going to have some toxic work environments in any job, in any industry. It's just the technology realm seems to have highlighted it so much because they're always at their computer and they're always connected to the internet, and they can complain and raise hell on Twitter. It's just the way it is. It's company culture, not that important, I don't think. That's not really a game changer. So all these companies investing into these little patty cake, games and these little giveaways and stuff. I've worked for companies that do that, and I don't think that really matters. Paychecks matter. How much money you're making matters. None of that other stuff, you give them a box of candy. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't really matter. So, yeah, better physical work environment, not really that important because, you're going to be sitting behind a computer. It doesn't really change no matter where you go. This is vital information. I would screen cap that and save that as something that can help you prepare for what to expect when getting into this industry. So once again, don't think too much about it. You have to know the playing field. You have to know what kind of disappointment and challenges to expect, and that'll help you better navigate and worry a lot less into what exactly you're getting into, and to prepare your mind for shifting and translating your experience into other industries maybe, or other fields within your industry. So I'll link this article in the description below. Make sure to click the like button or the fire button if you're on Odyssey. Keep the momentum going, keep dreaming, keep writing down concepts and drawing them out, and above all, stay grounded.